Thank you for all joining. This is FormusPro with the TSI team, and we'll be talking to you today about upskilling your non-profit teams with modern systems and AI. So hopefully you are all non-profit. I would imagine most of you from the US, given the time we're joining. So I am James. I'm the head of marketing here at FormusPro. I work quite closely with the Microsoft TSI team, which we'll touch on in a second. And I'm just going to introduce my colleagues, Phil and Matt. Phil.
Hello. Yeah, let's go next slide. Yeah, lots of words there. I'm a technical architect. Lots of three-letter acronyms that I know everybody in IT loves. If you're not in IT, and I guess with this kind of webinar, you may not be. You're probably more interested in process and governance and the like. But yeah, long and the short of it is I've been in IT for a while. Been in the dynamic space for about 15 years, and that's all Power Platforms. So. And if you're interested in, the blog is fairly technical as well, but do jump on and have a look sometime.
Phil stole my thunder there because he knew I was going to make a load of jokes about how many anacronyms,
Yes.
Acronyms he uses.
Yeah, you would.
So, yeah, stole it there. Matt is our non-profit and CE expert, and as you can see, uses a lot fewer.
Yeah, not as many acronyms. Hi everyone, I'm the Dynamics C practice lead at FormusPro. So I head up the delivery team for everything Dynamics and Power Platform. I've been working for FormusPro for over 7 years, but in Dynamics since 2011. So not quite as long as Phil. Sorry, Phil.
I feel there was a secret little dig there somewhere, I believe.
Not at all. Not at all.
Not at all.
Worked across a variety of sectors, but specialising in non-profit, as James mentioned.
So yeah, if as we go and anybody does have any sort of non-profit, and I presume all your questions will be non-profit related, that is particularly suited to answering those. So who are we and why are you listening to us? FormusPro is a Microsoft partner specializing in non-profit and non-profit delivery. We do consultancy, but we also do delivery. We are, well, all our consultants are hybrid consultants, deliberately trained up like that. I do, given that I work in marketing, need to get a sort of like a 10-word response to this, but defining a hybrid consultant is quite often when you are working with any kind of software delivery partner, you will speak to some very clever people who are very eloquent and will take all your needs and then pass them on to a technical developer who sits in a very dark room and drinks Monster and isn't necessarily so good at communicating. We train all our consultants as hybrid consultants. So anybody you speak to is also very capable of delivering the project and vice versa. What that means for yourself is the people that initially sold you the project, we'll be dealing with on a day in, day out basis. And that level of continuity is great. But it also means if you ask somebody to do something, rather than just going, okay, and delivering it, they'll understand the needs behind that. So actually, if they can understand not just what you're doing, but why, quite often we may be able to suggest better ways of doing it. We've been trading for about 13 years now. Our first client was a non-profit, the cancer charity Anthony Nolan. Actually, they're still working with us today. And probably point out as there's consultants on the phone, that's not still working on the same project 13 years later. They have worked with us on numerous projects, and we're big fans of continuous improvement, testing, strategizing, tooling, testing, and then working back and improving projects as we go. We are based in the UK, founded in Hereford, for anybody that knows your UK sort of geography. But we also have offices in Florida and Chicago. So just a little bit of difference in the weather and sort of temperament there. And also a couple of people out in India as well. And as all our delivery, as it says on the slide there, is backed up by a support team as well. So Phil, do you want to just quickly go over today's agenda?
So we're going to be talking, we're going to start at the bottom, if you like. We're going to sort of try and identify what we feel are the skills gaps that a number of not-for-profits in this area have. So what do you need and what potentially might be missing? And then we're going to jump number 2 there, modern systems made simple. We're going to start talking about how you fill in those gaps. What strategies do you need to put in place? What tooling might that be? And then we'll move on to some slightly more practical and actually cost-effective ways of actually training up your team. So we try and sort of we try and build, and hopefully it's not just all fluff and talk. There is some solid practical stuff in there as well.
Excellent. Just want to say thank you to the Microsoft Tech for Social Impact team. That is for anybody not aware, the Microsoft's non-profit arm. And as it sounds, although it is commercial, and Microsoft, they are actually non-profit themselves. Every single cent they make gets plowed straight back into the organization with discounts or software, and it all goes straight back to the non-profit sector. And their mission is to empower every person and every organization on the planet to achieve more. As it sounds, it's tech for social impact. And it was set up with a completely new business model. So they wanted to make money, so they had the capacity to build. They wanted to build a partner ecosystem with people like ourselves and organizations like ourselves, but they really wanted to make a difference with that social impact, reinvesting all that money back into the sector. Some numbers here. They've so far given away 4.7 billion in grants or discounted software and services. They've donated over $250 million by Microsoft employees, including company match, and they're currently working globally with 377,000 non-profit organizations, although there can always be more, which is why we're hoping you get something out of this and we can sort of work with you going forward. I'm not going to bore you and read off this entire slide, but we will send the slide deck out afterward if anybody is interested in the work the TSI team does. And I absolutely encourage you all to reach out because they're absolutely fantastic people to work with. But with that, I'm going to shut up, mute myself, and only interrupt occasionally if I think it's needed, and hand over to Phil and Matt, who I'm sure you're all here to listen to. So Phil, Matt, handing over to yourselves.
Yeah, so I mentioned at the beginning, we're going to start with the skills gap, identifying where we see where the holes are, and so we've got a few stats to sort of cover on that, and we're going to sort of show that how to build up on that, where those issues with the skills are, and how we can start to look at it, and then we'll move forward in the next few slides after that. So we're going to talk a little bit about digital literacy, data analysis and interpretation, and AI and ML. AI, I'm assuming pretty much everyone on the call knows that stands for artificial intelligence. ML is machine learning, and that's another sort of branch of artificial intelligence. There are lots of different branches of artificial intelligence. Obviously, the most recent stuff is all generative AI, so your copilots, your Claudes, your all those chat programs, generally generative AI. So a much more recent branch of it, but AI has been around for a while. Let's start with at the bottom of the pyramid, right?
Yeah, so the first problems that we're seeing non-profits facing, in the day-to-day is a lack of basic digital skills. There are gaps in ability and knowledge, and essentially in order to grow on top of those, we need to make sure that at the base of our pyramid is solid, and we can only do that by increasing that knowledge, bridging those gaps. We can do that through training, enabling people to fulfill their potential. We need to give them the correct tools, ensure that they are IT literate. I like to think of it as digitally transforming the people, not just the software. Absolutely, in this process.
Yeah, I mean, so we've got a few stats for that. The National Council for Voluntary Organisations revealed that 36% of voluntary organisations think their staff lack necessary digital skills. And 28% of these organizations indicated their staff lacked basic IT skills and computer literacy. So there's clearly a bit of a hole there in the market in terms of the skills that are available. And all this stuff is really important if you want to sort of grow the use of some of these new technologies. You've got to be able to drive that computer before you can then start to move on to data collection, and then even through to using artificial intelligence tool.
Yeah, it's a bit, that stat in itself is a bit shocking, really. The people we work with day to day, in our field of work especially, are expected to have that knowledge. A lot of the systems they're working with are digital, and there's an assumption that they will know how to use them and
absolutely, and drive around a PC. So data collection. So we're going to build on once you've got those basic digital skills, then we've got to think about the data collection, because artificial intelligence and a lot of modern systems rely on good quality data. Sort of at FormusPro, we've run a number of webinars talking about, how you deal with improving the quality of your data, be that through additional collection or analysis, or even creating artificial data sets. So you look out onto the FormusPro website, you'll see we've got a number of pre-recorded items about that. I won't go too deep into that now because we want to build up this pyramid. So it's also interesting. So a charity digital skills report highlighted that 31% of charities rated their data collection, management, and usage capabilities as poor or non-existent. And so again, this is an area that we're going to talk about how we might improve that.
Yeah, obviously I'm slightly biased in my interpretation. I'm working with not-for-profits every day in projects to, make these situations better. And still to this day, the most common request is for some form of CRM, some sort of marketing tool. So,
Yeah.
Getting the information into the system, lead capture, be it, automated through web or email or just manual input by those users. It's scary how many have sort of disparate data sources. They're still using spreadsheets. Stuff we need to get away from for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Once we've got data collection, so once we've built up our data and we're able to analyze that, then once you've got a strong view of your data, and that's not just for an AI. This is one of the things whenever we're doing chats about AI, is that we always indicate how important it is to have a subject matter expert to be able to cast an eye over the output of any AI and understand and sort of say, okay, that makes sense or that doesn't make sense. Or even to look again at the data and go, okay, is that really the full picture of our effectively our client base? So once we move on to that, we've got artificial intelligence concepts. And recently there's a huge growing interest in AI within the NFP sector. However, it tends to be at the moment a little bit more primarily informal, when I've got numbers here that only 11% implement AI across their organizations and an additional 5% working towards such integration. So quite small numbers. However, it's noticeable that larger charities are leading this trend. But it tends to be that an awful lot of people are using these informal systems. And the problem, of course, with those is that if your people are experimenting with AI, then you have issues potentially with the ethics of how you're doing that, data privacy, and any bias that might be present in the artificial intelligence in terms of the analysis and the output that it produces. And that's something we're going to cover in a little bit in terms of how that might be dealt with.
Yeah, it seems like potentially dangerous or harmful use cases where there isn't guidance from the organization, but people still have, the curiosity or a little bit of knowledge to go ahead and try and use it themselves.
Yeah, absolutely.
There seems to be a lot of we need AI. We get organizations coming to us saying, that exact phrase. A lot of the time they don't have a clear idea of what for and why. And obviously, taking these steps and that education process will help inform that.
Let's move on to sort of how we might be dealing with this. So we're going to talk a little bit about what you can put in place to sort the issues out, and that is going to start with a view of a strategy. We're going to talk about picking the right tools, and then how we might build those into pilot projects, and how we're going to use a form of continuous improvement to keep running around that cycle to ensure that our strategy remains solid and that the type of work we're doing with AI continues to make sense, is working for your organization.
Yeah, we're getting some great questions coming through, and hopefully over the next few slides we'll try and explain to you how to do the issues we've identified. So stick with us.
Stick with us. Yeah, absolutely. So we got a nice big circle on here. I think the original version of this, I had a bit more arrowage going on to indicate this is really just constantly ongoing. Like all frameworks out there, sort of, if you're going to put a strategy together, it tends to be something you can pick and choose from. And if you're going to start with a strategy, then you need something that's going to align with your organization's mission and its goals. And that's to say that you want to identify specific areas where AI can add value, such as automating repetitive tasks or improving your data analysis. So
yeah, I think in developing that strategy, one of the key things is obviously, talking to the people who are using that data day to day. The people in the organization, the same people we've said potentially have a skills gap, they should be the people who know, whilst they may not be as IT literate as others, they know the business inside out. That's why they're in your organizations, doing their best work. And we've got a couple of steps that I think sort of will help find that strategy, if I may. One of the first is, it seems really obvious, but start with some active listening. talk to the people on the ground, talk to the people who are collecting that data. What insights might they want? They could differ very much from the exec leadership team or the senior leadership team about the kind of data, insights, or information that they want. So conduct some interviews, maybe do a survey or a focus group, understand their needs and challenges and goals. Open-ended questions as well. There's no wrong answer in this situation. It's just how can they be assisted to do their job better, essentially.
To jump in there, just because there's a conversation about statistics going on in the chat, and obviously as a marketer, I love talking statistics rather than creative, but there's a really good reference point in a Gartner report. It's a couple of years old now. I think it came out in 2020. That says 86, and I want to say 0.4, but I have to check that. But 86% of digital transformations will actually fail. And when Gartner looked into it, the main reason was hearts and minds. So CFOs and CEOs would come in and implement this great big new software project, as Matt has pointed out, without speaking to the people with boots on the floor, and it would fail just because everybody carried on quietly doing what they'd always done and tried to ignore the new system as best as possible. So just involving those people from the very start, Heather gives you that information that you need. Possibly that 86% of transformations won't fail because you need those people using it right from the beginning. It is something we all feel really passionate about at FormusPro. You have to involve the excellent, massively agreeing. Thank you. But yeah, you have to involve those people on the ground floor. If you don't, you're just wasting your time from the offset.
Absolutely. And that's, be it AI, be it, projects over the last few years that I've done with Formus. One of the key things I always do is when I sit in those initial workshops is try and make sure that we've got people who you drag into part of the process. So when you're making decisions, that you're actually saying to them, what do you think? Does this make sense? We've gathered requirements, all that kind of stuff. But it's really important to ensure that they remain engaged, because you want them effectively to sell that out within the business. Because, sort of, I don't work for your organization, so do you want to trust me? But if I can get someone who can turn into a sort of a super user, and then they can go out and sell that, if you like, within the organization. And then you get a lot more ownership of the product. And people, once they think a product is theirs, to take a lot better care of it. So
yeah, that concept of collaborative environment, exactly what Phil said, workshops or brainstorming sessions to get the end users involved. You can use techniques like co-creation exercises to involve them in the problem solving, so they think that they're invested in it as well, and a lot of the times they're going to come up with ideas that perhaps you haven't thought of because of they sit within the organization. Also using visuals and prototypes, a roadmap for your idea presented visually will help people. Everyone's brain works a bit differently. Images, picture paint 1,000 words, as it were, so they can visualize your goal and then perhaps put their flavor on it as well.
Absolutely.
And it's perhaps a minor point, but I feel like, given the audience, we probably should say it. It's not just your staff. It's also well worth running pilot programs with your volunteers as well. Bring those into this process. Again, they're the ones with boots on the floor. So involving those in the process, the people that are on a day-to-day basis doing this, collecting your data or out and about, try and involve those as well.
Yeah, nothing beats live market testing for honest feedback in the moment. Absolutely.
So we were talking a little bit about developing a strategy there. Often it's a bit of a woolly idea. What is a strategy? Luckily, there's a lot of good frameworks out there which talk about AI risk management. One of them is the US National Institute of Standards Technology. They have a playbook, and it's a very practical thing. Like I mentioned before, in terms of frameworks, you can go in and you can pick what matches what you want to be doing, aligned with you might have a very vague initial strategy, but when you start running through their playbook, you can go, okay, I'm going to need this part. I'm interested in, for example, automating repetitive tasks. That's my key issue. Or is my other key issue, do I have issues with data analysis? Is that my weakness? And that's a really good source to start building out that strategy before you then go on to making a choice about choosing what tooling you're going to use. So I think moving on to sort of tooling, we've got the idea of what tools are you going to use for AI. The market is flush with tools. Tools from like Claude from Anthropic, see ChatGPT from OpenAI, Copilot from Microsoft. Obviously, we tend to come at it at a Microsoft run, but I think all of these tools have their own particular twists and particular flavors, which may or may not be useful for your organization. I think, if anything, I would throw into that and make sure that the tools are built in such a way that they can grow with you. So in 2 years' time, everybody's going to look back and go, well, ChatGPT 4, does everybody remember that? As if it were a piece of ancient history. And technology has never moved so fast as it currently is within the AI space. So, as a part of picking these tools, do make sure that you're looking at it with an eye to the future.
Yeah, I think Microsoft have done it really well, in reference to their tooling, of course, Copilot. They've natively integrated that into all of the tool set that we're using today. It's in Teams, Outlook, Word, and Excel, as well as the Dynamics product suite. But they're well aware that not everyone uses those. And so Copilot Studio is system agnostic. Any data source that you have and choose to feed into it, it can give you, that AI power, yeah, regardless of your affinity to Microsoft products.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Matt and Phil are being very technical consultancy there and being completely honest, but from a marketing perspective, just to make sure we're staying on message, Microsoft is the best. Nod after me, everyone, and give me a thumbs up. Microsoft is the best.
Yeah. Moving around our circles, so we've done our sort of what do we want to do, and I suppose our tooling is how we're going to do it, and then the pilot project is kind of the actual doing of it itself. We talk about pilot projects because ultimately we're interested here in minimal viable product and about being able to get stuff out the door as quickly as possible. And we mentioned earlier about ensuring that it's something that can be tested, and if it starts to fail, you want it to be able to fail in a safe way. So fail fast, but fail safe. And you can use these pilot projects to sort of gather feedback and make any kind of necessary adjustments you might want to make to your strategy and or your tooling.
Yeah, nothing like getting buy-in from actually having tangible results from an iteration of this. And we're not saying you're going to get it right first time. There might be pilot projects that don't work or don't save time, but as soon as you've got that sort of result, this is saving X thousands of hours or dollars, then you're onto a winner. Everyone's going to be invested in that, and it will give you a solid platform for future projects and expanding the scope of those as well.
Yeah. I think as you start to build out all of this, measurement is really important. Obviously, if you're going to check a return on investment before you even start a lot of this, as you're building up your strategy, start putting into place some levels of measurement in terms of the areas that you think that your strategy is going to impact. Because then when your pilot project does start to happen, you can instantly measure, okay, am I saving hours of person A's time, or am I not saving hours of person A's time? And then you get a good idea as to whether or not your pilot project is moving you in the right direction. I think let's move on to, we've got the skills gap, we've talked about how we're going to do it, and now how are we actually going to do the upskilling. So we've got a number of tools we could use here. We've got online learning platforms or in-house training or mentoring, or even free resources. So let's run through a few of those.
I think that's really important. There's certainly a dollar value associated with technical upskilling or digital literacy, but there are definitely ways that you can do that much more affordable than others. The good first example here is webinars, and congratulations to all of you for taking that first step, making the right decision and getting some knowledge for free. Webinars are a great source of a wide scope of knowledge, opinion, and information.
So we're on our screenshot here. That's a screenshot from Udemy.
I was going to say, Phil, just apologies. I told you I'd throw you off your flow at one point,
Yeah,
but just before we move on to Udemy, FormusPro also run a free non-profit AI Academy. I think we're 6 or 7 sessions in, just giving it a little bit of a shout out. I'll drop the link in the chat, but that's completely free to the non-profit sector, where Phil gives away quite high level sort of stuff, and then also quite technical stuff as well. You can sign up to all the lessons on demand. Everything that's previously done has been recorded, and you can sign up to all free sessions, zero cost to anybody with the non-profit sector. Just come along and ask any questions you may have.
Udemy. So if we're talking about online learning, external learning, if you will, then you can pay through Udemy. There's a number of different training websites out there. Udemy certainly comes highly recommended from people that I know. The prices strike me as pretty reasonable in terms of if you want to pick up these little nuggets of information. It's not a bad way to go.
How about, Phil, if you wanted maybe specific NFP sort of specialized knowledge, or maybe even sort of create some courses specifically for your staff and your organization?
Absolutely. I mean, you could go to sort of start actually creating your own bespoke training courses. So if you've got the knowledge in-house and you need to share that either externally to volunteers, for example, you want to train them in a specific way, then there are tools such as Teachable, Thinkific, Moodle are all ways where you can start to build up this information. Particularly useful, for advocacy organizations, social enterprises, or NGOs who want to potentially train their partners or community leaders.
Yeah, and while some of them may have a cost associated with it, many platforms specifically for charities and non-profits will offer special pricing, reduced pricing, or even free for those facilities. So it's worth checking out.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's kind of the external learning we've sort of talked about there. There's also a lot we can do internally. We've got the ideas of, let's start doing, internal stuff such as lunch and learn. So this is something we do at Formus, isn't it, Matt?
Yeah, absolutely. We practice what we preach here. So making good use of all of that internal knowledge and sharing it. We've got very senior members of the team. We've got very junior members of the team. Everyone can bring something, and we'll encourage all levels of seniority and technical expertise to carry out a lunch and learn. Yeah, offers great value.
Yeah, we've got some great people doing that. You can also, I mentioned learning management systems. You could, we talked about developing your own training platforms, if you like. The great thing about that is that it goes from being a little bit less ad hoc and allowing you to create, store, and track training modules in one place.
How are you going to keep everyone engaged on those? How are you going to get them to sit out and do those?
Well, some of them allow for gamification, and some of them allow for quizzes. And I know that you do like a good quiz, don't you?
Doesn't everyone love a quiz? Yeah, absolutely.
And that helps to sort of engage and keep keep people on board, as it were. You can be a little bit less ad hoc. You can use internal forums, Slack, Teams, or WhatsApp, whatever your flavor is within your organization. And it's a great way of allowing people to share insights and ask questions. We use Loop internally, Microsoft product. And we've got a big section in there on how to modify your prompting skills. So we've covered that before in the AI Academy. We also sort of try and sell that idea internally as well. Because again, there's a certain amount of people using AI, and some of them use it more than others. So it's great if they can share that information internally.
One of my favorite things that you helped set up, Phil, was our prompt library, because I'm guessing a lot of people working in a non-profit will probably be using the same prompts, but not everybody may be as comfortable actually creating a prompt as others. Actually having that prompt library that is specific to your organization, that you can just go in and say, right, I'm trying to achieve X. Oh, actually, there's a prompt I can just take that I know has been successful in the past, has been super useful.
I guess these people become learning champions, if you like. Because generally speaking, people who've got that love for that tend to sell that out. And again, it's like when we're working with clients, is if you can engage those kind of people, then they become worth their weight in gold, because they continue to sell the idea when a consultancy has moved on potentially. We also talked a little bit about using something like an LMS. Great thing about that is that you can track participation, and one of the great things about that is that you can also involve everybody within that. And I don't just mean sort of just forcing things out onto your staff and saying you must cover this article or you must cover this article. It's also worthwhile making sure that everybody sees that everybody within the organization is able to come on board and be involved in that, and visible. And so things like digital badges, certificates, or what have you, will help to encourage people to participate.
Yeah, always a bit of recognition for people going that extra step, be it personal achievement or indeed sharing their knowledge with others. Microsoft have always been very keen on that, of course, with their certifications. Something they offer, digital badges through the MS Learn platform, where you can expand your knowledge on their tool set, as well as the Copilot Academy as well through Microsoft.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's something we've seen quite a lot of non-profits take to quite well. So actually those internal badges for, right, who's ran lunch and learn certificate, lunch and learn session, give them a certificate that they can either pop on their LinkedIn or on their email signature if your branding allows for it, or just keep somewhere on their sort of laptop. They've run 10. Who's contributed to the prompt library, who's done this, and actually just, as they say, rewarding your staff with those certificates, it's again a form of gamification, isn't it, Matt, where people they want to then compete and get those certificates.
Absolutely, yeah. We got really healthy internal competition for our staff. It doesn't have to be internal. For example, obviously we sit the Microsoft certifications. The company are rewarded by gaining the accreditation through Microsoft, but it creates a really healthy and competitive environment where the consultants would like to one up each other, be the next person to get the next certificate or have the most certificates within the company. And it helps them out. It looks great on their CV, on their LinkedIn profile, as we said.
Talk a little bit about mentoring. Certainly, if you're going to do mentoring within your organization, trying to sign those mentors in the first week during the onboarding process, and make sure that there's a clear schedule set up for check-ins. So it's not just a tick box exercise. It is something that continues to roll. You help form relationships and continue to share knowledge with that.
I mean, you're very aware. Obviously, we've given you all of these ways of doing it, all of which don't come at an invoice cost to an external party because they're internal delivery. There will be a cost on people's time, on people doing above and beyond what their day-to-day job is. We're aware of that. As such, we would strongly recommend and suggest that the leadership sort of set the tone for this internal knowledge sharing, have senior leaders sort of completing the same online courses, being involved in those sessions, giving feedback, and showing the fact that they support this internal knowledge sharing, so that the employees then are not going to see it. It's not extra work. Allow dedicated time for it. Make learning part of their day to day.
Yeah,
feels like you're volunteering for something there, Matt. But actually, I just wanted to sort of jump in because we're talking senior leadership, and obviously I've watched Phil and Matt prepare these slides. One of the things that I'd not come across before, but I found utterly fascinating was the concept of reverse mentorship. And actually, I'm sure Phil will attest, I did raise an eyebrow to it, but you utterly convinced me on it. If you want to just quickly cover that topic as well.
Yeah, sure. This is where you get a younger member of the team. So we talked a bit about our lunch and learns, and we do have some of the younger members of the team are quite happy to stand up and sort of, basically teach the old dogs new tricks. Not that I'm that old, obviously, but
or a dog, I would hope.
but yeah, absolutely. Make it so that it's okay, and sort of as long as it's dealt with in a not patronizing, it's great to be able to pick up on these new bits of knowledge. We can't know all the stuff all the time, so it might be that it's something you've done previously, but I always think it's pretty rewarding when one of the younger team members steps up and says, hey, I can do this and I can tell you about it. And it's a great way of for older team members and we're talking earlier about sort of digital literacy. It's a great way of them being able to pick up and learn new things. They've always done stuff in Excel in a certain way, and suddenly if they get a couple of new pointers, then they can really trim some time there. So it's all to the good.
Yeah, absolutely. And it does nothing but good things for people's confidence. Not necessarily digital upskilling, but certainly emboldening those younger members, giving them confidence and reassuring them that that they are delivering good and they know their stuff.
And I guess last but not least, really, we haven't mentioned shadowing, which is also there's relatively little cost in there, but it's a great way of having somebody who either doing a very different job to you and seeing how another part of the organization works, but also about observing someone potentially who does the same role as you, and also seeing, okay, how do they do things? Are there items there that I can learn from, or is there something I can teach them? And roll these into sort of a day, into the day's work. So it's something where you create a learning organization that's always happy to modify and to tweak processes. Not saying let's go off and rewrite things every 5 minutes, but it's important to make sure that everybody's capable of identifying weaknesses with the existing processes and hopefully improving on them.
Yeah, I think everyone works, very much understandably so with the blinkers on, doing what they need to do to fulfill their role. Certainly seeing how someone else works and the different data sets they use can, reinforce the value that other data, supporting the data that you're capturing in your day to day, will help with the organization as a whole.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow, we're here already. Key takeaways. So I guess, start at the beginning, really. Encourage basic skills. Allow people to enjoy the technology. It's really easy for me, someone who does tech day in, day out, just to sort of to get carried away with it. But I think for a lot of people, it's making sure that they get given that time to to learn to enjoy it. Because, you're in this job, right? 8 hours a day or whatever. You've got to be able to enjoy it, otherwise it becomes a slog.
Yeah, and if the tooling and the training can help someone enjoy their job more, all the better. You're going to get more value from them, and they're going to see more value in their day to day.
Absolutely. Yeah, but that's form a strategy. So how do you want to use your technology? So we mentioned it in the earlier slides, but make sure that you're looking at areas of your organization where you can bring some real value to it. We talked about, okay, once we started on this, started looking at where is time being lost, for example, which is a bit of a basic way of looking at it, I guess, but it's certainly a good place to start. And then understanding that, and then trying to target those areas, and seeing whether or not the technology can bring value there.
Yeah, shortcuts in the previous 10 years in the past were always, what are long running processes that can be automated. It feels like the shortcuts of the future are what are long running tasks of analysis that can be handed off to someone else completely and enable someone to do better value elsewhere.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'd also at this point encourage everyone to get in touch, hopefully with ourselves, but certainly with Microsoft or a partner, because you simply don't know what you don't know. And one of the things, certainly with the new tech, the agentic AI and generative AI, what we're finding is a lot of nonprofits don't know what it can be used for. And as I say, you don't know what you don't know. So reaching out to somebody and say, look, I'm not going to talk to you about technology yet. This is our nonprofit. This is what we do. These are the problems we have, and these are how we operate. And actually speaking to somebody techie like Phil and Matt, so they can then go, okay, well, here and here and here is where technology could help you. And there may be areas that you haven't even considered implementing AI or a digital transformation of any kind that suddenly could save you thousands.
I think almost a last but definitely not least, I guess, is accepting that all of this is going to change. So technology is, I think I said earlier, it's never moved as fast. Every time I look back at a Microsoft website, something's been changed or something's been updated. And it kind of makes your head spin. And so definitely worth thinking back to that pyramid and thinking, okay, have I got these basic skills in place? Because those will sort of pay dividends, and build up on that before you jump into sort of a lot of the latest heavy tech. It might be you can skin up the side a little bit and have some sections where you have more basic skills in one area and build up, more like a skyscraper than a pyramid. Just be aware that once you've got those basic skills, they do pay dividends. And as things start to change, as long as the base of your pyramid's in place, you should hopefully be able to roll with the punches, as it were. Do get in touch. There are many ways to do so. Get in touch with LinkedIn, reach out to the marketing team. I know you're going to be shipping these slides out.
I would say if anybody has any questions, go ahead. We won't bite. Now, Phil and Matt are the subject matter experts, and they're here at your disposal for another sort of 15 minutes or so. Any questions you may have, now is the time to ask them. Otherwise, I'll say thank you and give you 13 minutes back looking at my clock. Oh, no, we do have a question.
Ibrahim?
Yep, just seeing if he's... here we go. So when we talk about AI, I see most people focus on machine learning.
Machine learning, etc. It's interesting kind of viewpoint there, but certainly the latest set of AI, like I mentioned, it's generative AI. So that's Copilot. Now, Copilot and all the various flavors of large language models use a slightly different set of technologies necessarily, but machine learning is available. What about Power Automate, Power BI, and the rest? Absolutely. So Power Automate is like the name guess, is all about automations, and so is more a process-based thing. So it tends to be a means of automating the updates of data, for example, and using processes to drive other systems. Power BI is a tool for looking at data and analyzing data and cutting data up and trying to get some level of analysis out of it. There are various flavors of AI available within some of those tools, and Power Apps and the rest. They're all sort of part of the Power Platform. So there's all sorts of levels of integration between those, which is it's a big topic. I think we have covered it in a couple of previous webinars.
I think we've actually got dedicated stuff on the Power Platform.
Yeah.
Well, that's a wide-ranging question. It's just, so can the Power Platform also be classified as AI when used with an AI service?
Yeah, I'd agree with that. So there's a number of different ways of utilizing AI. So a lot of the time when we use the Power Platform, we think about things as chunks of data. And so one of the cool things that Microsoft has done is that they've got AI services within the Power Platform, and be that traditional machine learning models. So for example, where you sort of have a big fat chunk of data and you're predicting, and it's basically using big mathematical models. But we also do have prompting tools in there as well, and they use large language models. So they're different technologies, but they're all under this AI banner. And yes, we have a number of those available within the tooling. So I've actually got some of this open in the background that I'm using for another client, as well as using bits and pieces of Copilot to check whether or not these values are that I'm getting out are making sense.
Yes, because also using the whole Microsoft stack, we can feed stuff from Dynamics Dataverse, as a data source for Copilot. Copilot can do its LLM analysis, the output of which can feed back into the Power Platform. We can use it as a trigger, or we can use it as a guide to include in a Power BI, or surface right back to the users in the front end. Sentiment analysis, for example.
Yeah, absolutely. There is a lot of ways of cutting that cake at the moment, for sure.
Excellent.
Ibrahim, I think did we get close to your answering your question there?
He's agreeing with you, which I know you both like. So I think we did. And if there's any other questions, what's the difference in terms of use case between Copilot and Azure AI?
Copilot is a bit of a branding term, and Copilot, there are lots of different Copilots, but broadly speaking, they all utilize a large language model under the hood. The large language model is, if you like, the actual engine that's doing the work. But what Microsoft have done with Copilot is they've put a lot of stuff around the outside edge that allows it to talk to potentially MS Graph. And the MS Graph is a way of looking at your emails and your documents and everything. And it's also got access to a lot of this stuff actually under the hood sits inside of Microsoft Azure, and Microsoft Azure is a big, large cloud processing system. So think of Copilot sort of, if you like, as a branding item with lots of various flavors specific to the area they work in. So for example, there's a Copilot in Word, and it's very specific to the jobs that you have to do in Word. There's a Copilot within Excel, and it's very different because you can ask it questions about Excel, and it's trained specifically to deal with those. So each of the Copilots have their own sort of knowledge, if you like. And then we've got Copilot Studio, and Copilot Studio allows you to build your own agent, chatbot, and autonomous agent, like Matt said, based on your own knowledge sources as well. So again,
yeah,
hopefully that kind of answers you. I think
it's a very big question, and is very fact dependent on basically what you're currently doing and what you want to achieve, which is a conversation we're happy to have and continue. So I'll make sure somebody reaches out to you. I'll make sure somebody reaches out to you, Ibrahim, and we're happy to discuss what the Microsoft stack can do for you in a multitude of different ways. Is there any other questions? It's going to hang on for another minute or so. I will say thank you very much on behalf of FormusPro. Thank you to Phil and Matt, and we'll hopefully speak to you all soon and see you at the next webinar.
Okay. Thanks very much, everybody.